What's up guys, this is Chris from Flyride. I'm going to show you the tools that you need to open up a pair of Genesis Coupe headlights. It's just a flathead screwdriver to do a little bit of prying and a Phillips screwdriver to take out the two screws that hold in the front lens. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work, show you guys how to do this. Okay, so first we're going to start with our two screws that hold the lens in place. Going to be located right here at the very tip, and the second one is located just a little further down right here. Okay, next thing we're going to do is remove all the bulbs and the cups on the back. I'm just going to set these to the side. We're going to stick the headlights on a cookie sheet, and I actually have a little piece of silicone sheet that I usually put on top of any sort of metal, anything metal that I keep in the oven, and that's just to make sure that I'm taking at least as much heat away from the actual plastic of the headlights that would be touching metal as possible. So the last thing we want to do is melt anything while we're only really trying to heat up that seal that's around the headlight. Okay, you can see I have my temperature set at 250 degrees. We're going to leave these things in the oven for about 4 minutes. Check it out. Just look around the edges, make sure there's nothing that shows any signs of distortion, and then we'll go ahead and let them cook another minute or so, and we'll end up pulling them out just around 5 minutes or so at 250 degrees. This part's important as well. You want to make sure that you can see all the sides of the oven so that you don't end up pushing the headlight up against one of the sides, which will definitely mess up your lights. So just make sure you got a lot of clearance, that it's not touching in any one area. Push this guy in. These headlights are pretty long, so you want to make sure that it has as much room corner to corner as possible. Give it a shake, make sure it's not touching anything, and we're good to go. I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes. Before the headlights are done, make sure you have all your tools set out, ready to work, because when this seal is only hot for just a minute, so we're going to want to attack it as soon as it comes out. Do really quick work along the bottom side of the headlight to just separate the seal slightly. Then we're going to move to the top, work our way around in key points that really relieve the stress on the lens, so that we're not ripping in any one direction with too much force, which could result in cracking the lens. And we're going to get this thing open in one shot without having to reheat it a second time. So it's important that you do fast work, but that you are gentle in how you're prying on the light, and that you do it in the right places. So that's what we're going to see right now. Alright, it's about to come out. I suggest using one mitt to take it out. Even though you might want two, it's just nice to have something to set them down on once you pull them out of the oven. Alright, so first things first, we're going to hit the bottom of this thing. You're going to want to pry up on these tabs, starting with the one in this corner, and you don't want to pull up too hard on it, because it is able to snap the tab a little bit. Just go to the major sections in there. You'll see where the tabs are at. Just quickly go through, get the driver in there, and pry up a little bit, and I'm blocking your view. And then if you can, go right in between the two tabs. Give a good little pry in each little section. And we're going to switch to the top right now. And all that we're doing is just making it so that later when we get back down to this, it hasn't cooled down and become a lot harder. Here's the next spot you want to go to. It's a tab hidden right underneath the top. Then we're going to work our way up here. There's another tab hidden underneath the top. And there's another tab right here. If you attack just these ones specifically in the way that I'm doing it, what it's going to do is let go of all the major points that hold this thing together. So now that I'm back down at the bottom, I'm going to actually start seeing some good headway. And just work in the same area so that you're not prying in multiple areas. Keeps the work clean, and when you go to reseal later, there's only a couple little spots that you're going to want to apply pressure to get those little bumps to go back down. Okay, now we're going to work back at the bottom. Make sure your tabs are flipped up. And same thing here, just work your way along where you did before. Okay, so this should be good to start opening up. To open it, you're going to want to grab with, if you can, if it's cool enough, grab with both hands, and you're going to start separating this corner. If you need to use anything to help pry, just make sure that you don't have to put too much force on it. And it should come by itself. There's also a little tab hiding underneath the back right here, and it has a tendency to want to break. So it's very important that you work as steady as possible and you don't pull too hard in one direction. Okay, should be good to go. Also, if you have not removed the turn signal bulb right here, this part will be next to impossible. And these little tabs will hook back up as you're working, and you won't notice it. And then that also makes it impossible to separate. Just make sure you keep checking them. If you need to throw that driver in there, just get a little bit of distance between the black plastic and the clear plastic. And that's pretty much it. From this point on, it's just going to be steadily working our way around, and all these little pieces of rubber right here as well are going to be, just want to make sure that you don't let them fall on all the chrome pieces because they're really difficult to get off, and you'll end up rubbing the chrome right off the piece that you're trying to clean up. And when you get to this part where the front is open but the back of it's not, use your flathead to actually work your way around it, and that'll avoid putting any pressure anywhere where it could lead to a crack or anything. You just see I'm working my way up. And you're going to want to pull this top half forward so that it comes out of its slot right here in the corner. That's pretty much all she wrote. Just takes a little bit of patience and a bit of confidence so that you can work quickly without being frantic. I definitely don't suggest anybody do this that has a hard time keeping their cool, as you will break parts that are very expensive to replace, and it's just no fun to do it that way. Okay, so here's our front lens. I'm going to go ahead and take this guy apart right now. There's just two screws on the bottom, and there's two screws that hold the main shroud in place as well. So here goes these two bottom ones. do suggest that you do this part while the light is still warm, mainly because you can put all the bulbs and all the screws in a Ziploc bag somewhere where they're all together. You're not going to misplace anything later, and it's easier to remove these parts when the glue is still warm, because this little corner right here can just get really stuck down in place. It's really tacky, and when it cools down, it definitely doesn't make it easy to pull up on. So you can just give a little pry up with your flathead if you want to get your finger underneath that spot. And pull this right out of place like that. Now if you're doing any work to this part and you're not painting it, you're going to want to wear gloves right now, because this part is super easy to smudge and to get prints on, and it's impossible to get off. This thing is actually being painted, so I'm going to put my hands all over it, but I'll go ahead and pop a couple of the parts out of this so that you can see how you'll need to do that if you want to do any painting, and we'll go from there. This is a little trick I use to make sure that all my parts that are clear plastic stay really nice and unblemished. We're just going to pop the parts out of the bezel, and then we're going to wrap them in this plastic cling wrap and just set them aside so that nothing gets on them later. Fingerprints, smudges. If you even try to wipe this with the microfiber cloth, it's going to leave scratches on it. And this is the part that I'm talking about right here. This guy, you do not want to touch that in any way. What we're going to do is pop out the tabs that hold that thing in place right now, and there's a certain way to do it, so I'm going to show you right now. Then we'll wrap up the part in the plastic and set them aside for later. Okay, so the goal right now is to get this clear lens out without really touching it, cracking it, scratching it, anything at all. We just want to keep it safe, remove it, get this thing painted, and then reinstall it without letting anybody know that we're ever in there. Alright, so the tab I'm going to show you first is actually located right here. And to get to that, you look through this little clear window, and you can see where that tab is. So before I go trying to mess with that tab, I need to get the front to pop out of place right here, and then I'll pry it forward a little bit. Okay, it just popped out. So now what I want to do is get something very fine that I'm not going to leave a mark, just enough to pop it up so I can get my finger under there. Only touch the very edges of this piece. So as I pry up right now, what's going to happen is it'll pop out on this other corner right there. And now because it's pried up like this in the front, if you can see, that's created enough of a gap on this inside piece so I can fit my driver right in there. Right into place right there. So I'm gonna set this down. I'm gonna keep my driver right there where you can see that tab. I'm gonna twist, and it's gonna force it to pop out without putting any extra pressure anywhere else on this lens. Violent as that looked, it was pretty easy for the part. There's no chips, nothing is broken off the bezel or the chrome. So this is now good to go to be sanded and painted, anything I want to do with it. And this clear lens we're going to wrap up now. Slide it back over here. Pick it up from the sides so you don't make any marks on it. I'm just going to fold this stuff over it. Create a little bit of a cushion. And set this aside. So now I can handle that. That's something that you want to put somewhere safe. You don't want it to be scratched, but you don't have to worry about it collecting a bunch of dust or anything at this point. Alright, so the last part of this headlight that we're going to take apart is the actual shroud. And I'll tell you now, before I even attempt it, a really common thing to happen at this point is for this little tab right here to break off. If I can do this on the video first shot without messing that up, I'll be proud of myself. But don't hold your breath. It's really easy to snap off. So here's how we're going to do this. This little guy right here has to be barely pushed inward, and then this needs to come up. Now we're going to do all of that while making sure that we're not prying on any of these parts, which will end up snapping this. So if you do it just perfect, you'll know, because the thing will pop out and you won't have any little plastic pieces falling around afterwards. Okay, so I'm just going to pry just a slight bit up on this. It's created a tiny little gap. Now that I have that gap, I'm going to mess with this portion. And if you want to keep something here for cushion too, it's definitely not a bad idea. Okay, my driver just on the edge right here. Let's see if that helps me get these guys wedged out a little bit. Okay, I feel it about to give right now. Let's see if I can. Okay, I managed to do it decent. So if you look, I wedged just a tiny bit of pressure right here, and it let me pop out that little push through pin. And now I can pick it straight up. You can see that part. I actually didn't snap it. I must know what I'm doing. Or maybe I'm lucky. Alright, so here's our part. If you're going to paint this thing, if you have clear corners, you're going to be able to see whatever the paint is underneath. So if you want to keep that nice and shiny, tape this off. If you want to go with like a full blue painted shroud, a bezel, anything, then just go ahead and prep it all, spray it all down. And if you're going to be painting the housing, it's pretty apparent you're going to want to pop this guy out if you're not trying to paint over it. I do a lot of work where I paint these and they look great. They have really cool little lines in them, and it's hard to tell with all that reflective surface, but once you spray those things down, they actually have a really good look to them, and you wouldn't even ever know that they were reflectors to begin with. So this guy, you just put a little pressure down right here, down on the side, and you just push it right out the back like that. Okay? All your parts ready to paint. And when it comes to reassembly, it's exactly the opposite of what you saw right here. Just pop all those little panels back into place, the clear reflector or the clear inside lens right here. It all just pushes back into place. I suggest using latex gloves if you don't want to leave a bunch of prints. And other than that, just keep a steady hand and don't lose your patience. Take a breather if you get a little bit tested and you think you might snap something, because chances are you're going to snap it if you're worried about putting too much pressure and having a hard time. Alright, that's my advice. I hope it helps you guys. Take care.